Today we are reacting to a video by the channel that I've been enjoying very recently. They will be talking about dupes and dupe culture. So let's get straight into the video.
Your Gucci bag, China. Your Prada sunnies, China. Your Louboutin heels, yes, you're right, China. Are we witnessing the death of capitalism or unraveling the illusion of privilege? I have so many questions. After China's recent crackdown on luxury goods, truth is crawling into light. And yet, we're paying thousands in the West for made in Italy. Or is it just shipped to Italy, stitched with a fancy tag and slapped with a 400% markup? Did you know this? Or have we been glamorously duped the whole time? Why are we still worshipping these goods like they're the gold standard of quality and class? Are we chasing an illusion of status that is being mass-produced behind the curtains? So, the question is, do luxury goods still hold the same value, or is the fantasy finally cracking down?
So first of all, interesting statement that was made. And yes, I've been covering this a lot, kind of just trying to add some more context into this whole conversation around luxury goods and why they're so expensive and all that sort of stuff. I kind of made the point in a previous video, but I think people really don't realize how much money goes into research and development and coming up with new ideas and new designs. Like what dupes do is they let the luxury brands do the heavy lifting. The luxury brands are the ones that have to spend millions building their brand name, millions on runaway shows, millions on getting influencers and celebrities to wear their clothes, millions on paying celebrities to wear their clothes on the red carpet, all of this to raise the allure, and they are the ones that come up with the original designs in the first place. So all these things kind of are accounted for when it comes to the cost of a luxury good. And what a dupe does is they kind of bypass that whole thing and they just copy your design and sell it for less. So it's kind of, they're riding the coattails of you spending all this money building your brand, and then they capitalize off it, which is why personally I would never buy fakes. Not that I'm judging you if you're watching, if you buy fakes or whatever. It's more to do with, if there's something I like that I can't afford, in the meantime, I'll just find other things that I like that I can afford. It's very rare that, you know, something is really, really expensive that I like, because most things I like, especially clothing wise, are not stupidly expensive. Like I don't like Birkin bags anyway. I don't like the design. So you wouldn't see me buying Birkin bags. The stuff I like, I can buy a Yoji and Andermele Meister secondhand for like $100, for $150, for $200. So a lot of stuff that I like is out of reach. So I've never really understood this total obsession with buying bags. And that's how I know that, do people buy stuff because they like the design, or is it just kind of what it signals? Or people are more obsessed with the idea of what these luxury goods represent rather than actually caring about the design merit. Because if you cared about the design merit, you probably wouldn't buy dupes either. You would want to support the artist that actually came up with the idea, or support the brand that came up with these original ideas.
Discuss in the comments down below.
Lately, the internet's been buzzing with headlines, TikToks, and exposés. Luxury goods are made in China. Your designer bag and the dupe are made in the same factory. Super fakes are basically real. It's causing massive confusion among consumers, and for good reason. As luxury production shifts globally and Chinese factories take center stage, one big question keeps coming up. Are we buying dupes, or are dupes now somehow authentic?
So all of my designer goods that I paid thousands for are from China. I have a master's degree in international business and I extensively studied international business law. So let's break down the whole truth. Here we have a pair of authentic Christian Louboutins. You can see on the sole of the shoe right there, it says made in Italy. The key thing to understand with this situation is that in both the US and the EU, country of origin claims such as made in Italy or made in France are legally regulated. These claims are not just slapped on here for the aesthetic. In the EU, a product can only claim to be from a specific country, whether that's France, Italy, or Spain, if the last substantial transformation, which basically means the majority of the assembly process.
Okay, it's good that she said that, because so many people misunderstand this. So many people from the discourse I've seen online misunderstand what last substantial change means. Like, I don't think a lot of people know that. If you go on the EU's trade website and you look at the law, even the UK, we have our own law on this. I'll put it on the screen. They're very detailed in what they mean by last significant change. You cannot, it's not legal at least, not to say brands don't do it. Brands do many things that aren't legal, and I've talked about this before, whether it's, working with third-party manufacturers that are using illegal workers in their factories. That's not legal, but a lot of brands still do it. So not to say that, everything that brands do are legal, but it is actually illegal to just add the label made in Italy when everything is made from somewhere else. I think what people misunderstand, this is what I actually think. I think people misunderstand where something is created versus where the raw materials come from. So I'll give you a good example. I'm from a country called Nigeria. Nigeria doesn't make most. Most of the leathers in the luxury industry come from places like India, from China. Tanning leather in a good way is a whole science, and it's like a big skill. And to be able to create leathers that are really, really good to be used in the luxury industry is actually really hard, but that's a separate conversation. But some of the raw materials do come from Nigeria. And a lot of people online were saying, you guys think that your leather goods are made in Italy, but actually it's all comes from Nigeria. But my rebuttal would be, yes, the raw materials come from Nigeria, but those leathers still need to be processed, and that's where they get processed in Italy. Italy literally has whole towns just full of leather tanneries. I've spoken to people on a channel about this before, but if you go to the Tuscan region in Italy, there are loads of leather tanneries there, like loads. Like it's one of the meccas in the world. So when they say made in Italy, it means it's processed in Italy. It doesn't necessarily mean that every raw material in the world comes from Italy. So a lot of people misunderstand this as like, oh, you think your stuff is made in Italy, but it's actually made in this place or that place. It's like, okay, no. The raw materials might come from there, but a raw material coming from somewhere and it being processed and finished in a different place is completely different. So this understanding that, they just slap a label and therefore it's made in Italy is a big misunderstanding. It might happen sometimes, and that's where, brands are not doing everything above board and they're being illegal. However, I think people refuse or maybe don't understand the difference between like a raw material versus like a finished product. Most companies get their raw materials from all over the world, but ultimately if something is manufactured in a certain country, that's where it's made because that's where it was manufactured. In the automotive industry, for example, they might get copper from one country, semiconductors from a different country. They might get microchips from a different country and aluminium from a different country. There's so many raw materials that goes into making a car. But ultimately, if the processing plant is in the UK and they make that car in the UK, then the car is made in the UK, even though the raw materials of that car, of which there are probably millions of components, come from all over the world. So I think there's sort of a misunderstanding there.
Happens in that country that it is claiming to be from. What that means is if you're designing the product in Italy, but then importing all the materials from China, assembling the shoe in China, and then bringing it back over to Italy and then just sticking a couple of things on it, that doesn't count. If the main manufacturing of the
She's correct. That would legally be illegal. Like that would be against the law. If you get the raw materials from elsewhere, it's manufactured basically elsewhere, and you just add a label, that is actually illegal by law.
Product happens in China, it must legally be labeled made in China. Anything else is illegal under EU Directive 2011/83. This is enforced by national consumer authorities. And trust me, the Supreme Courts of these countries do not mess around when it comes to their made-in labels. Italy does not want counterfeit products to be labeled made in Italy if it's not made in Italy. It's also...
So my rebuttal, because I like to have balanced takes and critiques on this channel, is even though it's illegal to do that, that's not to say that brands don't do that. We've seen so many scandals of, brands doing shady things. I wouldn't put anything past brands. I'm not here to, blindly defend brands. I'm just here to, talk about the facts, talk about what the fashion industry is, talk about what the supply chain actually looks like, because I work in the fashion industry and I have a good, strong sense of what it looks like. So it's not to say, because even counterfeit goods, right, are illegal. That's why a lot of counterfeit goods are stopped at the border, when they go through customs. However, so many counterfeit goods are imported and exported to different countries that it's very hard to stay on top of all of it. A lot of borders only have so many resources. So they aren't actually able to stay on top of every single thing. A few things will fall through the cracks. And that's probably the same thing with the industry. Yes, they might do things that are illegal, but unless they're caught, no one really knows. So I do think that a lot of what luxury brands do is above board, but some of them do things that are illegal, to be fair. So it's not to say that no brand would ever do it because it's illegal. However, it is actually illegal to have something completely manufactured elsewhere and therefore still add a made in Italy or made in France or made in UK label. That is actually illegal by law.
A very similar story in the US. US border controls and customs look at what is called the essential character of where a product is formed. So if a product is mostly made in China, it must be labeled made in China.
There's been a recent surge of attention around Chinese factories that manufacture goods for high-end brands. These videos and articles often suggest that the same facilities producing £2,000 designer handbags are also cranking out fakes sold for £200 online. The story is seductive. You're not buying a knockoff, you're just skipping the branding fees, right? Not quite.
Everybody on the internet right now is talking about DHgate and the rise of super fakes. They're talking about this same factory theory and the idea that fakes are so good now that they're even getting verified. But that's not entirely true. And more importantly, it kind of misses the point. Now, I want to educate you and introduce you to a little thing called entropy. I know a lot about this topic because, funnily enough, back in COVID, I was working on a fashion resale marketplace startup as a bit of a side hustle. And part of the business model back then was to solve the exact same problem that is still plaguing resale today, which is authentication. Now, I actually ended up exiting the business, but the best thing that ever happened as part of that process was we obviously...
To be honest, though, a few resale platforms do have issues with fakes. I mean, there's a recent story about The Row having fakes returned to The Row and them having an issue with that. The Real has had issues authenticating fakes. StockX has had issues authenticating fakes. So it's not like it's both. Most fakes are not as good as the original, but some fakes are good enough to where they are hard to authenticate, and there's evidence to show that, to be fair.
Pitched to investors, I joined accelerator rounds, and I learnt so much about fashion tech and AI, and I want to share some of that with you. Entropy is basically a $10,000 AI tool that most resellers use to basically authenticate any luxury designer goods. It works by scanning major details on all of your designer goods. So it scans stitching, it scans the leather grain, it scans logo ink, and it basically compares it to thousands of verified examples. Now, it's not infallible. However, most fakes don't make it through. The fakes aren't exactly getting verified as everyone.
So I can believe that most fakes don't get through, but like I said, some will because they're good enough to where the ink is kind of registering as the same. The leather used is similar anyway, so it won't really notice a difference. And that's why a lot of authenticators have had issues actually authenticating certain things. So it's not like a perfect science, but I do agree with what she's saying that for the most part, most fakes won't even get through that process.
Saying on here for clickbait, but they are getting harder to detect. And this is exactly why the luxury world is now changing the way it protects value. Enter blockchain technology and Aura. Aura is a platform that was created by LVMH. And the way that it works is that it basically gives every product its own unique ID, kind of like a digital passport that tracks its journey from atelier to purchase to archive.
Here's where the lines get blurry, and intentionally so. Yes, some luxury brands do manufacture in China. Yes, China has factories capable of producing high-quality goods, but no, that doesn't mean every dupe is made in the same place, with the same standards, by the same people. Counterfeit sellers and some resellers blur the truth to make products seem more legitimate than they are. They'll tell you...
I don't know how many people struggle to understand this. Like, people don't understand that if you're a counterfeit good seller, you need to convince people that it's the same thing because that's how you sell your counterfeit goods. So you have to try and blur the truth as much as physically possible because that literally works in your favor. That is your business model. You're trying to sell fake. So if you can convince people, there's no difference anyway. That's how you can sell and make a living. So if there is a counterfeiter telling you anything, you have to take it with a grain of salt because when you when you listen to someone, you always have to think, what do they have to gain? What do they stand to gain from what they are telling you? Now, if a counterfeiter is telling you, oh, they're all the same, then, you know, you have to just take what they say with a grain of salt, because they're trying to sell you something. Like me telling you the facts about the luxury industry, I'm not selling you anything. I'm not selling luxury bags right now. I'm not. Maybe in the future I will, but I'm not right now. So I don't have like anything per se to gain by telling people that no, not all luxury goods are made in China, and trying to dispel all this misinformation. I actually have nothing myself to personally gain. I've seen a lot of people in the chat say that I'm paid by the brands, which is hilarious. Like, why are brands paying you to say this? You're doing damage control for the brands. How much are they paying you? I think it's quite funny that people would say that to me, but then not question someone that's literally selling dupes and selling fakes as to, you know, you're trying to sell me fake bags. So if you're telling me it's the same thing, should I believe you? Should I believe you that, you know, everything is made in the same factory? Should I believe you?
These items are factory extras or same materials, same workers, but real luxury factories operate under strict contracts, rigorous quality control, and brand-specific standards that fakes simply don't meet.
So I'm assuming you guys have seen all these videos right now that are circulating the internet about how all of our luxury brands are actually manufactured in China, and we've been paying like thousands and thousands of dollars more than it's actually worth. Guys, like, I don't know if I...
First of all, worth is subjective. I haven't really spoken about this in all of my previous coverage of this topic, but what is something really worth? It's perceived value, right? It's what people decide it's worth in a way. So just because maybe it costs a certain amount to make, and a lot of people are like, it costs 1,000 to make, so it should only be like, you know, 1,500 if it's you use so and so multiple. But it's like, first of all, there's costs that you're not looking at, like marketing costs and all these other costs, regulation costs. But even beside those costs, it's really down to what people want to pay for it. There are many things that if you look at how much it takes them to, how much it costs to market something, and how much it costs in terms of raw materials and assembly and manufacturing, it shouldn't be that expensive, but they can charge that because it's perceived value. So even people saying, you know, it's not worth it, I always think it's very subjective, because people would say, for example, a Chanel flat bag is not worth it. But if you bought a Chanel flat bag for retail 7 years ago, because the retail price is so much higher now, you could sell it now and make a profit. So is it not worth it? Is it a waste of money when you could buy it and 7 years later sell it for more than you bought it for? How could that possibly be a waste of money if you make a profit on something that you use? There are very few goods that actually, you know, gain value with time and use. Most things go down in value with time and use. Like cars, most consumer goods are like that, right? It's only really like houses or certain luxury goods that go up with value with time and with use. So yeah, once again, when people, you know, say, oh, it's a waste of money, and I say this as someone that I own no luxury bag, so I'm not talking like I'm trying to defend myself or defend my purchases because I've bought loads of luxury bags. I own no luxury bag from no luxury brand. I'm just telling you now, like Balenciaga, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Prada. I don't own any bag from any of those brands, by the way. So I don't have skin in the game in the sense that I'm trying to defend my own purchasing decisions. It's just fact. If you can make a profit for something that you buy, or you can sell it for the same price you bought it for or slightly less, I don't understand why people think it's this gotcha moment that, oh, you wasted all this money, these people are so stupid, when they could literally make their money back by reselling what they bought.
I believe that. I really don't know if I believe that. Like 10 years ago, before I was doing well, I bought a bunch of fake designer stuff off DHgate, which is like one of the most popular websites that you can buy fake designer from in China. And they came in 6 months later and they looked like total garbage. The quality was so bad. It was so bad. And now that I actually have real designer stuff, now that I'm in my 30s, I look back and I'm like, What the hell? Like, the quality doesn't even compare.
This might not sit well with everyone, especially those that are still clinging on to economic nationalism. But hear me out. We could be witnessing the very early stages of a global marketing shift. One where Asia isn't just manufacturing luxury, it's marketing it and it's its home. And the US middle class, they're about to become the target. For years, luxury brands have built their value on mystique, on European heritage, exclusivity, and price tags that symbolize status. But that illusion is starting to fray. Chinese manufacturers, where many of these luxury products are actually made, are pulling back the curtain. And they have been for years. They're just getting the
Hermes bags aren't, this is the perfect misinformation I see constantly. Hermes bags are not made in that factory where that guy is making dupes. And he also didn't say, how many times will I have to say this? He didn't say that he makes Hermes bags. He said his claim was that he can make Hermes bags of the same quality. And even though he can't, we've already, proven that he can't. But I don't, comprehension online is really, really low these days. Really low.
spotlight now. And they're doing it on TikTok in real time with receipts. Newfound transparency is already shifting that customer perception. Buyers are starting to ask, if it's made in China anyway, why am I paying a 300% markup for a Parisian storefront? And
so the thing is, I feel like people that spend a lot of money on luxury are quite educated on fashion. Maybe not as much as people that work in the industry, but they have a good understanding. I think most deep into it luxury consumers know that clothing is manufactured all over the world. Please watch my video about, the made in China stuff. I will put that on the screen. But it's very important for people to understand that the fashion industry is $1 trillion industry. It's a global industry. Things are manufactured all over the world, from India to China to Vietnam to Cambodia to France to Italy to the UK. Things are produced all over the place. So raw materials come from all over the place. Things are manufactured all over the place. I even made a point, and people still want to say that everything is made in China. I made a point that most luxury brands actually shifted their production away from China into lower cost labor markets like Vietnam and Cambodia. And the reason that they've done this is because Chinese labor became too expensive. So this idea that most luxury brands produce in China, are there some luxury brands that produce in China? Yes. But most luxury brands producing in China is a fallacy, especially when a lot of luxury brands see Chinese labor as very expensive, because most of the very difficult, complex things to make are the pieces that are made in Italy, made in France. The more mass-produced products is what is made, was made in China. And that's why cheap labor is important to these brands, because they're churning these things out and mass producing them. So if they could find somewhere where the labor is cheaper, they will go there because they're trying to improve their profit margins. Share prices need to go up. Shareholders need to be happy. And so I just don't understand how people keep spewing this misinformation like it's fact, and they say it confidently. It's crazy.
add to that the current U.S. political climate, specifically the Cheeto-in-Chief's 145% tariff on Chinese-made goods, another tariff on European-made goods. The outcome is almost laughably ironic. Instead of encouraging domestic spending, those tariffs are unintentionally motivating Americans to take their money abroad. We're removing the middleman entirely.
Chinese manufacturers have become central to global production, but that doesn't mean they're transparent about everything. Some operate legitimate high-end production lines by day and turn out copycat versions by night, illegally.
Exactly. So this happens in the industry where certain manufacturers that have contracts to make luxury goods with certain luxury brands, they have to sign contracts, right? Which is why when you see people online saying we make so-and-so, could it be true? Yes. But the second that they, divulge that, they are not going to be working with that brand anymore because they've breached the terms of their contract. So I don't see any world in which it would make sense for a manufacturer to come out and say, we make products for Dior, because they would lose a lot of money overnight, because Dior would just be like, okay, we're not producing with you. And I've seen a lot of people also say online, all they need to do is just show us where their stuff is made. First of all, a lot of brands do tell you where their stuff is made. Hermes has a whole map of where their stuff is made in France. Very recently, they just opened a new factory in Normandy, actually. They're quite transparent with where all these things are. People just choose to be willfully ignorant and just don't want to do any research. They just want to believe what they want to believe. And if that's what you want to do, fair enough, but it's just not reality, right? They tell a lot of times. A lot of other brands won't tell you, because why would they, share their trade secrets? And I've spoken to so many people that run factories for luxury brands, right? And they have told me that they have spent years fine-tuning their supply chain, fine-tuning, where they source things from. And if too many people know where they source all these things from, it could make the prices go higher because the demand is high. Like supply and demand, if that gets messed up, then too much demand, that means that, and not enough supply, that means that the price is going to be higher, and it's going to be higher for the luxury brand too. So there's so many reasons why they wouldn't share that. Just because some people on TikTok are like, share where everything is made, doesn't mean they'll do that, because it's actually detrimental for them. So it's kind of strange that people are just like, expect them to just start sharing every single aspect of the brands, or people claiming that brands are making responses when no luxury brand has made any response to the whole controversy around these Chinese factories. People are looking at campaigns from like 5 months ago and being like, this is LV's terrible response to this whole controversy. They think they fooled us. It's just insane. It's all quite crazy. But yeah, it does happen that these people with these contracts to make luxury goods illegally, because normally they have contracted hours. So there are, like, in most countries, there are like legal laws on how long workers can work, what conditions they should be able to work in. So what a lot of these factories do is they sign the contract, and then through the night, they then bring in new workers, or it might even be the same workers who they pay like pittance for overtime, and then they make goods in the same factory that goes on to their legal market, essentially. But that's not legal. And if brands find out about that, they can sue the factories, they can, win settlements. That is not legal. Just letting you know it's not legal, but it happens sometimes, but not as much as people think.
Others may exaggerate their connections to famous brands, using them as marketing leverage to boost credibility. It's a slippery game of half-truths and quiet omissions.
It honestly baffles me that you...
So I said this before, the hardest misinformation to dispel is misinformation that has truth mixed into it. I always say that, because a lot of these Chinese manufacturers, what they're saying is kind of true. Like when they say luxury brands produce in China. Yes, well, some luxury brands do produce in China. But then where they overdo it is saying, when someone said that, 80% of all luxury goods are produced in China. That's not true. So it's like, it's true that luxury, goods are made in China, but then when they say 80%, now they're just lying. So, but because it's truth mixed in with half-truths and untruths, it can all kind of seem true. And if you don't work in the industry and you're not, closely related to where these manufacturers are, you don't speak to these people, you haven't been to factories, right? I've been to luxury factories, so I know that they are massive. The factories in Italy are massive. They're literal towns in Italy full of factories. People don't know this because they haven't been there, right? They can't see how humongous a lot of these factories are. People genuinely think that these luxury brands are pretending, where they just have like 10 artisans working in a room and then everything is shipped to the factory in China. That's not true. So it's really, really difficult. And I understand why it's so difficult to dispel certain misinformation when there's truth mixed into it. It's so hard to do that. It's so hard to dispel that kind of misinformation.
Guys are only just clocking on to the Chinese designer goods. Whilst here's me with an entire wardrobe of Hermes. I've got Birkins, Pickertons, Her bags, Lindy's, Evelyn's, Constance's, wallets, scarves, you name it. And they are unreal.
The way China is spilling the...
So this is what I always... And in the chat, let me know, or in the comments, I'm too used to live streaming, but let me know what you guys think in terms of this obsession with luxury brands. I don't understand it, because... why, let's say if you can't afford the real thing, like all the bags she said she has, why do you have to have those specific bags? Why does it just so happen that all the bag designs you like happen to be bag designs originated by luxury brands? Why not support up and coming designers that have bags that are more affordable rather than buying fakes, right? Why is it always that I've never understood buying loads of fakes for loads of different brands? Why not just support like independent artisans or, you know, different smaller brands where you live? You cannot tell me that the only bag designs you like are bag designs that are by Hermes or Gucci or Louis Vuitton. They're not the only brands in the world that make bags. So I always, you know, I've never really understood it. This obsession with brands that if I can't get the real, I'll get the fake. How about just don't get any? How about just get a different designer, some cool designer in London or wherever you live?
Beans on these luxury brands, okay? But the DH girls try to tell y'all. They try to tell y'all, okay? It's the same damn thing.
The chaos of Chinese manufacturers just choosing violence and revealing all the secrets about where products are made, how much they're made for, and the fact that you can source directly from the factory in individual units.
So once again, half truth, because we reacted to the Tanner Leatherstein video where he quite clearly showed that a lot of the people in these like Chinese TikTok videos don't even know how much these raw materials cost, and they're miscosting these goods, right? They're actually spreading more misinformation by having the wrong values in terms of certain things and how much they cost. So it's quite obvious they don't know how much it costs, but it helps them sell dupes. So they're just going to give you any figure. People are going to believe it because that's a narrative that people want to believe. And then they're going to tell you, you can buy the same thing from us for a fraction of the price, buy from us. And then people just buy. And well done. You've made them money. You've made them rich. I think that's all that's going on here.
Is just absolutely chaotic on social media at the moment. So I'm going to put a video together that recaps a lot of that. But it reminds me of the experiences that I've had going to factories in China and realizing that if the brand doesn't want to keep ordering the product, the factory can just make it themselves. So if a lot of these brands from the States decide that they don't want to make that product at that factory anymore, there's nothing really to stop the factory from just continuing and make it anyway.
So this is true. What he said is true, where they have the expertise to make those goods. So even when brands, like I've said, they've moved to lower labor markets like Cambodia, like Vietnam, like India is another place that brands say that they're moving to because labor cost is too high in China. So even though they've moved there, a lot of these Chinese, you know, manufacturers, they have the expertise now to make those goods. They've been trained, they have the equipment, they have the machinery. So they can very well just keep producing the same things and just selling it as the real thing, even though now it has nothing to do with the brand, right? And it has to be noted because luxury brands, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them have very stringent quality control, right? I went to the Celine factory where the quality control is insane. And that's why Celine quality is very good. And you rarely see people complain about Celine quality or have issues with their products. And the reason why they care so much about quality control is because they think it's very important that, you know, customers have a good experience with their products, because one bad experience is enough to destroy the mystique of a brand being high quality, right? And they understand this. But when you have a factory that is no longer under the supervision of a luxury brand and just producing bags on their own, they can just make what they want. They don't really need to follow any quality control because that's not, you know, ordained by the brand. So they can just make what they want, and that's why the quality ends up not being as good, even though they have the expertise and they have the same, you know, machinery and stuff, because there's no one watching over them, making sure that they're producing things to a certain level. And so that's why that happens. We saw the story recently with the LVMH Texas, the Louis Vuitton Texas factory having production issues and them incinerating 40%, which is crazy. Like their wastage rate of that factory is 40%, which is double the industry average of 20%. However, it says a lot that I think it's horrible sustainability wise that they're incinerating all those products. However, it says a lot about their quality control, that they're getting rid of all those products because they don't want faulty products to hit the market. Now compare that to a dupe factory, a factory that's making dupes. They don't care about all of that. They'll just make everything and then just sell you whatever, because who do you go to when your stuff comes as bad quality? They're not a brand. It's just a factory selling you stuff. You can't legally chase after them or anything. Like, so they know they can get away with selling anything of any quality. You can't return it. So they know they can get away with that. So there's a big difference. Even when the same factory that used to manufacture luxury goods is now manufacturing dupes, there's still a big difference in the quality control and therefore the end product that the consumer gets. So even when it's made in the same factory, it's made under different kinds of supervision.
People still think about made in China, it's all about cheap price. Oh, sweetie, you're so late season. Today, I'm at the world's largest trade fair, which is Canton Fair, and let me show you around how Chinese technology and AI is really going wild. Let's go. AI is literally everywhere, in a factory, in a hospital, restaurants, even in the delivery system. And yep, over there, even the companion robot is now a big thing. Look at that robot dog. It can control your yards and the fashion.
So here's one of those like half-truths once again, because China is so like technologically advanced compared to most places, to be honest, because China's business model as a country is manufacturing a lot of the goods in the world. If someone said China manufactures 80% of clothing made in fashion, that would be believable. But when you say luxury fashion, now it's a bit different, because the supply chains of luxury fashion brands are very different to sportswear brands that are cheaper, or, you know, fast fashion brands. Very different things, completely different things. So that's like a half truth. But in this video, they're showing you like how technologically advanced China is and how advanced they are, which I definitely agree with. I think it's a misconception that made in China means bad quality. I keep saying this, I'll keep saying it. China has the capability to make anything. Everything from the highest quality garments you've ever seen to the worst quality products you've ever seen. It's just down to the companies that go there and what they want. Most companies that go to China are like, we're just trying to make everything for cheap. So make it in the cheapest way that you can so we can maximize profits. And that is what leads to bad quality products. If you go to China with every intention to make a high quality product, you will end up with a high quality product. That's just facts. So I do agree that, you know, the technology in China is just so superior to most places, to be honest. However, using that as a reason to kind of say this is why everything is made in China is where the half-truth comes in.
The ball and shake the hand with you and even stretching, just like a real dog. Oh my God, is that a BB-8 in Star Wars? Such a futuristic thing here. It's actually a rescue robot. I really think these products are so fantastic, and they will get better and better and more advanced and more affordable.
Let's be real. Luxury brands have played their part in this confusion. They've increased prices while letting...
So I don't know what he's going to say, but before he says what he says, I'm just going to take a guess. So luxury brands, my main issue with luxury brands, literally the most viewed video on my channel is me critiquing luxury brands. So this misconception that I'm just blindly defending luxury brands when the most viewed video on this channel is me critiquing them is insane, to be fair. My issue is the quality. That's my main issue with the luxury brands. The price, I don't really have an issue with it, because it's either, you know, if I can't afford something and I just won't buy it, I'm not too bothered. If other people want to spend their hard-earned money on it, they can do whatever they want so long as they worked hard for their money. So I don't really have an issue with that. My issue is charging loads of money for something that isn't good quality. That's my major issue. And I think these brands have themselves to blame because they've started cutting corners. Therefore, the quality for a lot of these luxury brands have gone down, yet they increase prices. So because of that, it becomes easier to believe that, you know, everything you make is made in China, or everything that you make is, you know, made with this, or everything is made here, or everything that you make is made in a sweatshop. So they have themselves to blame, to be honest. Part of it is their fault. Part of it is definitely their fault. So let's see what he says though.
Quality dip in some areas. They outsource more than they admit, often while maintaining the illusion of Italian craftsmanship or Parisian heritage. And they thrive on fear. Fear of fakes, fear of missing out, fear of buying from the wrong place. This all creates a perfect storm where consumers are left wondering, what's real anymore?
Speaking out after videos online have been popping off with Chinese manufacturers claiming they can sell you the same luxury items for a fraction of the price.
They sell you a legging pants for $100. Here in these two factories, you can get them for around $5 to $6.
So listen, the videos call out big name brands like Lululemon, Nike, Dior, and Louis Vuitton, claiming they make their stuff super cheap in China, then slap on a label and sell it for way more in the US.
The material and the craftsmanship are basically the same because they all come the same production line.
On top of that, some creators are even urging people to buy directly from these Chinese manufacturers.
Follow Daniel, help you find the best suppliers.
We did some research, and according to brands like Louis Vuitton, they actually say they don't produce anything in China according to their website. Plus, our BG Show team reached out to Lululemon, and they said in an email statement, and I quote, "Lululemon does not work with the manufacturers identified in the online videos, and we urge consumers to be aware of potentially counterfeit products and misinformation."
The removal of the $800 duty exemption is supposed to go into effect May 2nd. So if it's already here in the country before then you should not have to deal with tariffs, because last I checked, that exemption is being removed May 2nd. So fingers crossed your stuff will get here in time. These Chinese manufacturers are going up against all of the big luxury names. You want a pair of Nike shoes for $20? You go get them. You want 3 pairs for $20? You can probably buy them direct. Now, there is a caveat. May 2nd, Trump is going to close this loophole. Right now, the reason the Chinese manufacturers are doing this is because this is how U.S. citizens can avoid this crazy tariff war that we've got going on with China. I wrote about it in my blog. Check it out.
So, what can you trust? A super fake might look good on Instagram, but up close, it's still just a copy. Just because something's made in China doesn't make it a fake or real. And if the price feels too good to be true, it probably is. The luxury space is more complicated than ever, and the narratives around fakes, factories, and authenticity are evolving fast. But one thing hasn't changed. Real luxury is more than just a logo.
I'm literally crying over my nails right now because they're so ugly. Oh my god, okay. This is what I wanted, okay? This is the pastels, and this is what I got.
All right, I asked Chachi.
But why would you fall for that? Like, why would you think... I've already said you need to think of what the agenda is. Like, if someone sells fakes, what do they stand to gain from telling you that don't buy from Louis Vuitton, we produce the exact same thing? They're trying to sell you something. They literally make money by telling you that. So of course they're going to tell you that.
T is it Asian or Chinese people in the garment factory making LV in Italy? And it says, you're onto something important. This is a real situation. In Italy, especially in cities like Florence, Prada, and a lot of the garment work, including luxury brands, is done by Chinese workers. So yes, it's mostly Chinese immigrants, not just Asians in general, who are working in factories that produce leather goods, clothes, and accessories for luxury brands. Here's how it works. Luxury brands often outsource parts of their production to small subcontract workshop in Italy.
Yeah, before this person finishes, that's where most of the issues in the supply chain for a lot of luxury brands comes from. So a lot of luxury brands have their own factories, but luxury brands have scaled so fast and a lot of them have become so big that it's almost physically impossible for them to produce all the goods that they produce in their own factories because it would take too long, it would cost too much for them to build all the factories. So a lot of the issues with supply chain quality control almost always comes from when they work with third-party manufacturers, which almost most of the luxury brands do. And they are where the issues are. That's where you might be able to find like illegal workers. The main reason for this is because when you outsource to a third-party manufacturer, they don't only make your clothes. So let's say Louis Vuitton outsources to a third-party manufacturer. They could have the contract to make Louis Vuitton bags, Prada bags, Dior bags, all in the same factory, right? So if you're a Louis Vuitton representative, you can't really have a representative from your brand just like go there and be watching over how all the other brands are made, because then the other brands would have an issue with that. Like, what are you trying to do? Why are you looking over our goods? So because the people that run these factories know that a lot of brand, these separate brands can't have a watchful eye over what's going on in these factories for that reason. They know, okay, we're making all these goods, we have this contract, we have the expertise and the machinery to make these goods. Why don't we just use illegal workers and get them to make even more than we're contracted to make, so we can sell a lot of these on the black market and all that. It's a way for them to make, extra money and stuff, because they get greedy. And that's why a lot of these scandals happen. Now, my issue is the auditing process should be better. The way that these things are regulated by law should be better, so these things don't happen. They need to have, investigators investigate these factories more often, government officials looking at these factories more often. That's what needs to happen. My issue is more how these things are regulated, because I think if these things are regulated a lot better, these wouldn't be issues. We've seen how horrible the auditing system is. I've talked about the article via Reuters where they did an amazing investigation on exactly how the luxury fashion auditing system works. And it's horrible. The auditing system is a joke, to be very honest. It shouldn't even exist. It's pointless. So they need to fix all these things. But when you see a lot of these issues, it's not the direct factories. And that's why there's so much confusion, right? Because a lot of brands can have, let's say they have 20 of their own factories where everything is being made above board, people are paid fairly, the working conditions are great, people aren't inhaling toxic fumes all the time, and there'll be loads of bags that go to the store from these kind of factories, but then they will be mixed in with products from third-party manufacturers. And so people are like, well, there's this one factory that we saw a case where there are these illegal workers. So that's all brands. Everything they do is just that. And that's the problem. There's no nuance in these conversations because that can happen with a third party manufacturer, but then it won't happen in their factories that they own and run themselves. So it's complicated. These supply chains are so much more complicated than people think and give it credit, and that's why I think there's so much confusion around these
to keep the Made in Italy label. And it goes on to say workers, often Chinese migrants, sew ensemble cut, leather, craft goods under very tight deadlines. Important point, even though it's Chinese laborers doing a lot of the actual work, the final product is still legally made in Italy because it's ensembled in Italy, which matters a lot for branding and pricing. And it says here, short version, yes, Chinese people are heavily involved in making LV and other luxury goods in Italy, especially in leather goods and garment factories.
我们一生注定是沧桑，苦之来要笑着走过呀。
So yeah, that was an interesting video, but it still seems like a lot of people don't really understand how the fashion supply chain works, or they overestimate one side of it because it fits their narrative, when in reality, all these things are all happening at once. Like there are third-party manufacturers that have illegal, working practices that are working with luxury brands happening at the same time. Luxury brands have their own factories where everything is done above board. I mean, I went to a luxury factory recently. I don't even think I saw one Chinese person in that factory, and it was a huge factory. Like, all the people I saw in there were Italian and French, and it was huge. Like, it's not, once again, these factories that people think only like 5 people work in and then everything is outsourced to China. All these things are all happening simultaneously. And I do think that regardless of what you think about this whole case and this whole situation, these luxury brands have themselves to blame, and they cannot complain about it because it's their fault. I think it's their fault. I think they have themselves to blame because if the quality didn't go down, if they weren't cutting corners in any way, if they didn't scale so fast like they did and actually created all their own factories so they wouldn't have to work with third-party manufacturers, then none of this would happen. None of these issues would happen. So I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments. Please watch these 2 videos. They are very, very important to watch. One about why luxury fashion is a waste of money. I really talk about the history of luxury fashion and how it changed when everything became ultra commercial and big conglomerates bought them. And I also talk about this whole phenomenon of made in China and where exactly luxury brands do produce. But thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.